So, who is Gen Con for? Because I think that's the big question for our audience. Because I said all this stuff about Gary Gygax, tabletop RPGs, board games, and stuff, but we are primarily Lorcana focused. So I think coming into it, Gen Con was more. I like the idea of it because I'm into all of that stuff. I play Dungeons and Dragons once a week. I got a crew that I get together and do that stuff with. My family loves board games, but we also love Lorcana. It was fantastic for me. You, on the other hand, coming into it, you really like the idea of just being there for Lorcana. So,
Yeah.
as someone who was there for Lorcana, I think you're better at answering this question. But we actually had someone in our Discord server who was following along with our journey and stuff while we were there and seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. I believe it was Mike, old
Disney Dad.
Canada Mike. Yeah. He asked because, I mean, him not being able to actually get to participate in a DLC where he's in Toronto and stuff. Again, you got to go to Atlanta, so you've seen the best of both worlds now. So his big question that he asked is, which do you think someone should prioritize right now? Going into like next year, because Gen Con's obviously over now, but what would you prioritize? Would it be Gen Con or would it be a DLC? I
Okay.
have my opinions, but you going to both, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear Dylan's piece too, because again, we got back Sunday night, and it's like we were straight back to work, everything else. So we really haven't debriefed ourselves in a way. So we're going to be talking a lot here, but uh, I'll mention this in our last portion, but as somebody who was primarily there for Lorcana, like yeah, I play board games, but I've never played other TCGs. Like I'm not into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. As somebody who was primarily there for Lorcana, I was cautiously optimistic that I was afraid I was going to be bored, but that was not the case. That being said, it depends on your group if Gen Con is right for you. We'll answer the question, are we going back next year, kind of to route things out, but it depends on your group. I think Dylan actually, part of that response said if you want to be part of that Disney bubble, 100% Lorcana with some artists and side events and just being in the main thing, then a DLC will be a great experience. I don't think you could go wrong either way. Gen Con, on the other hand, the presence that we're getting ready to talk about with Ravensburger and Lorcana, the presence that they had at Gen Con is no different than what they have at other conventions like PAX and other conventions as well. So if your crew, the people that you're going with, or even yourself, if you like Lorcana, but you want to check out if you have other interests more heavier into board games and tabletop role-playing games, Gen Con could probably be good as well because it will allow you to pivot. I know a great example of that is Dylan. Dylan did things leading up to our first chapter sealed, but then it's like it was a pivot. And I even pivoted as well. I had a little bit more of a heavier Lorcana schedule than the rest of the crew, but it's going to determine it's going to depend on your interests, you and your crew's interests, but also pricing. Gen Con is a much longer event than a DLC. Gen Con could easily be, was it Wednesday travel day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? That's 5 full days if you do a travel day before the full convention, 6 if you do the Monday afterwards. So cost is a big thing as well, but also accessibility too. DLCs, obviously, we're seeing how that's going. We're going to talk about that in our next episode. But Gen Con is a little bit more obtainable. Now, the big thing is registering for events and stuff like that, because that's a whole other beast in Gen Con. But it's going to depend on your crew. As somebody who was there primarily for Lorcana, I see the benefit of both. The experience that you have at Gen Con is going to be similar, but not exact to what you would have at a DLC and vice versa. A DLC, Ravensburger has complete control. So it depends on your crew and who you're with. If you have a family that maybe has an interest in other board games and stuff, and you're afraid of just pounding Lorcana the entire time, then you might want to be able to pivot at a convention like Gen Con. And I know that Dylan did other things too. What's your take on that?
So again, going back to the pricing standpoint, We were fortunate enough to receive press passes, but I did have to buy Gen Con pass for my daughter.
Hmm.
So a 4-day Gen Con pass, because again, I don't have the exact pricing for individual days, but I know you can just get a weekend pass or individual days as well. But Gen Con typically lasts 4 days, and there were Lorcana events all 4 days. And the tickets were $150 starting out for a 4-day pass. DLCs for an individual person, I believe, is starting around 50.
Depends. The attendee, I have to look at my Eventbrite, but I'm pretty sure my Milwaukee ticket was $75.
Okay, that's playing, right?
That's playing in the main event. Yes.
As a competitor. So then there's going to be a different price for just an attendee. Okay, then you got to go to the actual events side of things. So again, there were Gen Con, or there were Lorcana events all 4 days of Gen Con.
Hmm.
And if we'll talk about those later on too, about all the different cons that they had. But my thing is, how many events does a DLC typically offer, side event wise? If we're not talking just the main show where everybody's like actually playing.
So it's been a while, and plus, I don't know what they're playing this year, but there is at
Right.
least 2 to 3 side events going on at the same time. If you had somebody attend a DLC, I would say comfortably, excluding Pack Rush, like if you did Sealed or Starter Deck, you could probably do 2 to 3 events per day, roughly, approximating.
That's if you can get tickets for them.
If.
Because not only do you have to worry about pricing, but then you have to actually worry about the availability of tickets. For me, I feel like it's easier, that accessibility, to get tickets for Gen Con in comparison to the tickets for DLCs that are immediately going to sell out.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then yes, you prioritize DLCs. That way you prioritize those tickets, but if you don't get the DLC tickets, you can still fall back on that crutch that is Gen Con because those tickets are easier to receive. And
Yeah.
then the events themselves, I feel like there were plenty of events, even like the day of, that still had tickets available for us to participate in.
Yep. And we're getting
Whereas,
ready.
yeah,
Sorry.
whereas a DLC, I feel like those event tickets or the side event tickets immediately sell out too.
Yeah. It's I don't have it in front of me, but I think there was roughly 80 events, I believe, for Lorcana. The only ones at Gen Con, and we're getting ready to talk about them, but the only events that I remember seeing sell out immediately was anything first chapter, one core constructed, and a bonus sealed on Sunday.
So,
Other than that, I registered 5 minutes before core constructed and had
yeah.
no issues. So it was the accessibility was a lot better at Gen Con.
Well, let me jump in here talking about accessibility. When last year, I went last year. It sold out at 70,000, so they opened up more tickets this year. Not a lot, but this compared to last year, Lorcana didn't have the presence last year that it had this year, which is different. Now they've set a bar, so hopefully next year it will be just as big. The big thing last year was they had the side events. They had no panel or anything like that, and they didn't have as much. It was really just starter deck, the quest, the Ursula's quest, and core constructed, and that was it. And they sold out like that last year. This year, it was just, first chapter stuff sold out and nothing else sold out. So for you to, my thing is be optimistic that this is the way it's going to be next year, because it may not be this way next year for Lorcana. The first year it was because they launched Lorcana at Gen Con, so everybody lost their minds and was there. But next year, they may not have a panel. They may not. Last year, there was no influencers there. There was no people from Ravensburger there, other than the people working the booth for the sales. and whoever was running the games, and that wasn't Ravensburger. That was whoever it was at that time. Was it Pastimes that was doing it, or is that who does it now?
I think it was PPG last year.
PPG,
Pastimes
okay,
is
yeah.
on it now.
I don't know. I get everybody
Pastimes
confused.
was there this year, too.
Yeah. But that's one thing to keep in mind, that I'm hoping that this year, since everybody that was there in attendance and Ravensburger sees, all the hype around it and all the people coming and, Rebecca and all the influencers and stuff like that, they'll come back next year. We'll see. But fingers crossed, because it was a totally different feel this year than it was last year as far as Lorcana wise goes. So
I think everyone said that online that I've heard of.
Yeah.
And we weren't there last year, so we can't really compare.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you're right. They have set a bar now. And this is a big thing, and I hate to spin off of this and go too long, but this is a big thing that I've been discussing with a lot of people within the community right now. Going back to even Mike yesterday, I was having this conversation with him, that we love Lorcana. When you love something, it is so easy to become emotionally attached to everything that happens, both good and bad. Whether it's the DLCs and stuff like that we get upset about, or stuff like this that we get excited and hopeful about, the only thing that we can do is hope. Hope for the best, and hope that Ravensburger continues to be kind and fair and have the best interest for the Illumineers in mind. And I think that there's no argument that they have that. And even watching some other creators' content, going back to the Illumineers, seeing them sit down with Elaine and Coop, love Coop. He played the biggest part, I think, in this tournament, not just like the competitive tournaments, but these events that took place at GenCon. His name was attached to them, and there is a interview, I believe it was Liam who sat down and talked to him about it, but just their understanding now. And again, this man's, I advocate for him. He's only been here for 4 or 5 months. His first actual event he did was the Worlds. And he now that he is there, they are finding their footing. They are all coming together as a team, and they realize that you have to do more for all types of Illumineers, not just the competitive players, but those social players too. And I think that's why we saw so many different events. There was such diversity in the style of events that could cater to every type of Illumineer.
Well, and the other thing is too, is how many of those people were at Ravensburger during Gen Con last year? One?
Not a lot.
One
Not
of
a
them?
lot.
I think one of them. I think one of them was. I think all the other ones have come in just in the past year. So that'll make a difference too. Now that you've got people in place and they had boots on the ground, it's like, well, okay. Now we know we're setting a precedence. We got to do it this year, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. So I hope
You mentioned precedence. I think that's a good capital thing on it is after seeing how things went this year, if I were to attend Gen Con next year, I would hope this would at least meet what we experienced this year in terms of diversity of events, number of events, physical presence. They've definitely set a precedent, and I really hope that they continue to do the same things, even expand on it too. I'm down to try all sorts of things, like some things that we're seeing in China and stuff like that. I love to play with in Gen Con and other conventions. But I think precedence is the big one. Obviously, it was a blast, but they have created very big shoes. I feel like they got the right people in play. Things are looking really good. If we haven't even started talking about events yet, what was there, and you're already gushing about how well it went. But I hope that next year at Gen Con and even other unofficial events, not DLC related, I hope that they continue to meet that bar. I don't know what more we could ask from them, other than maybe card reveals having a dedicated spot. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But